The sky over planet Valora 6 was always dark, filled with thick clouds of gas and smoke. Cold wind blew through the streets of the alien city, and people walked fast, their heads low, their eyes cold. In the middle of that busy street, a tiny alien girl walked alone. She had no shoes. Her feet were bleeding. Her skin was pale and dirty. Her eyes, big and glowing violet, looked around with fear and hunger. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten in days. Her thin arms shook as she held them close to her chest. The aliens passing by didn't stop. Some looked at her with disgust. One vendor yelled, "Get away, street rat!" But she didn't speak. She couldn't. She just kept walking, slow, weak, tired. Her breath was short, her legs were shaking, and then she collapsed. Right there, in the middle of the busy spaceport street, her small body hit the ground. No one helped. Some walked around her. Some stepped over her. One alien child laughed and pointed. "Look, the street ghost fell again." But in the shadows, someone watched. A human. He stood near a food stall, holding a cup of hot broth. His name was Evan. He was a cargo pilot alone in this city for a delivery. He had seen many things across the galaxy, but this sight made him stop. His brown eyes watched the tiny girl lying motionless on the cold ground. "Hey, is she okay?" he asked the vendor. The alien vendor snorted. "She's nothing. Just trash, always crawling around, probably diseased, best not touch her." But Evan didn't move away. His heart pulled him forward. He dropped his cup and walked toward the girl. The wind blew harder now, lifting dust and trash. Her small body didn't move. For a second, Evan thought she might already be dead. He knelt beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. Just barely. They were full of fear. "It's okay," Evan whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you," a voice behind him called out. "Leave her, human, she's cursed, dangerous." Evan ignored them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar. Slowly, he opened it and held it near her mouth. The alien girl didn't move. Then her nose twitched. She smelled the food. Her tiny hand moved, weakly, shaking. She grabbed the bar like it was her last chance at life and took a bite, then another, faster. She chewed and cried at the same time. Her tears mixed with the dirt on her face. Evan looked around. People were still staring, some whispering. He picked her up in his arms. She was light. Too light. Just bones and skin. "I'm taking her to my ship," he said. "Fool," an old alien hissed. "You'll regret this." Evan carried her through the crowded street, back toward the docking bay. She didn't speak, but she held on to him tightly, like he was her last hope. Inside Evan's small cargo ship, the lights flickered on. "Unauthorized life form detected," the AI spoke in a robotic voice. "Warning, biological contamination risk." "Override," Evan said. "Quarantine protocol, disabled." The girl looked around in fear. Evan set her down on the padded bench in the living area. He grabbed a blanket and gently wrapped it around her. Then he placed a water bottle in her hand. She drank like she hadn't seen water in days. Her throat made soft, painful sounds. "What's your name?" Evan asked. She looked at him and said nothing. She didn't seem to know any human language. "That's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to talk right now." She kept staring at him, confused, afraid, but there was a tiny light in her eyes now. A small hope. Evan sat near the console, watching her. He had no idea what he just got himself into, but something inside him told him he did the right thing. He sighed. "Guess it's just you and me, kid." And for the first time in a long while, the lonely human wasn't alone. Soft humming filled the air inside Evan's ship, the kind of sound that made most travelers feel safe. But this time, the ship's calm tone was interrupted by heavy coughing and shaking breaths. The alien girl was curled up under a blanket in the corner of the living room. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Her hands were still holding the empty protein bar wrapper as if someone might take it away. Evan stood near the console, watching quietly. He didn't sleep that night. The ship's AI broke the silence. Human. This life form shows unstable vitals. Medical care is advised. Species, unknown. Threat level, uncertain. She's just a kid, Evan said firmly. Scared and hungry, that's all. But deep down, even Evan wasn't sure. The girl had strange marks on her arms, glowing lines that pulsed slowly. Her eyes had rings of color that shifted in the light. She looked part organic, part something else. Something modified. He walked over with a bowl of warm broth. Here, he said gently. She sat up slowly, still weak. She sniffed the air like an animal. Her eyes locked onto the bowl. He handed it to her and she sipped it carefully, then faster. After a few sips, she stopped and looked at Evan. Just stared. What? He asked softly. She pointed to her chest and tried to say something. The word came out broken. Ria. Evan smiled. Zaria? Is that your name? She nodded. That was the first time he saw her try to speak. Later that day, Evan gave her a long shirt to wear. It dragged behind her as she walked around the ship, exploring slowly. She touched every screen, every wall panel, with wonder in her glowing eyes. Evan watched her from the cockpit, sipping cold coffee. She's just a kid, he said again, but this time more to himself. He opened a new file on his tablet. Subject, unknown alien child. Name, Zaria. Condition, malnourished. Emotional state fragile. Then came a sudden alert from the AI. Incoming message. Local Port Authority. Requesting full passenger scan and manifest review. Evan's heart sank. They're already looking for her, he whispered. He turned to the door and saw her standing there holding a small toy drone in her hands. She smiled softly and pressed the button. The drone lifted off and hovered near his head. You like that? He asked. She nodded. For a moment it was quiet, peaceful, like she wasn't a hunted fugitive, like she was just a normal little girl. But Evan knew that peace wouldn't last. That night, Zaria curled up near the engine room where it was warm. She wrapped herself in the blanket he gave her and closed her eyes. But she didn't sleep easily. In the middle of the night, she woke up screaming. Evan ran to her side. She was shaking violently, eyes wide with terror, whispering in her own language. Her arms were glowing again, bright this time. Symbols appeared on her skin. He grabbed her shoulders gently. Zaria, you're safe here. You're safe. It took minutes to calm her down. Finally, she buried her face in his chest and cried quietly. Evan sat on the floor with her until the glow faded. She's more than she looks, he whispered to himself. In the morning, Zaria was different. She followed Evan around the ship, copying his movements. She tried to mimic his speech. She even cleaned the small table using her sleeve, as if trying to be helpful. Evan smiled. You're something else, kid. He turned back to the console. He had to make a decision. He could drop her off at the next port and let someone else deal with her. Or he looked at her again, small, quiet, brave, or he could protect her. He typed into the console, course update, random jump, nearest unregistered world. The ship's AI replied, this will break all standard protocols. Evan answered with, one word, good. As the engines powered up, Zaria stood beside him, holding his jacket tightly around her shoulders. She looked out the window, stars blinking in the distance. Evan looked down at her and smiled. Let's find a place where they can't hurt you. Zaria didn't understand his words, but somehow, she smiled back. The screen flickered. A sharp beep echoed through the ship's control room as Evan checked the public galactic alert system while Zaria played with a toy in the corner. He wasn't expecting anything unusual, just routine flight data. But what he saw made his stomach twist. A bold red banner flashed across the console. Alert, fugitive child, bioweapon escaped. Do not approach. Below it was a photo. Zarya. Same. Glowing eyes. Same tiny face. The words beneath made Evan freeze. Highly unstable. Dangerous. Stolen property of the Yatari Syndicate. Reward, 80,000 credits. Dead or alive. Zarya looked up just then, smiling, holding out the toy she fixed. Look, she said in a soft voice. Evan didn't move. He just stared at her. That smiling child was being hunted like a weapon. He powered off the screen quickly. Zarya tilted her head. You okay? Yeah, he said, forcing a smile. Just ship stuff. But his heart pounded in his chest. 80,000 credits. That was more than he'd ever seen in his life. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty stars. She followed him quietly. She sensed something had changed. Suddenly she reached for his hand. It was small and warm. He looked down at her. Zarya, he whispered. Who are you really? She didn't answer. She just held his hand tighter. Later that day, he sat in the cargo hold with his tablet. The reward notice wouldn't leave his mind. He opened a secure channel and ran a scan of her DNA using the ship's medbay tools. The results came back confusing. She wasn't fully one species. Her body showed signs of deep genetic engineering, mixes of multiple alien races, some extinct, and something else. A coded signal in her cells, like a key, a map, a message. Evan leaned back in shock. They didn't want her back because she was dangerous. They wanted her back because she might change everything. Suddenly, the ship jolted. Incoming scanner ping, the AI reported. Unknown ship attempting to lock coordinates. Evan ran to the cockpit. Through the ship's viewfinder, a black shadow approached in the distance, fast and silent. A hunter ship. They found her. He grabbed the controls. Hold on. Zarya ran in, scared. What's happening? Bad guys, Evan said. Stay down. The grand auction hall was filled with aliens from all over the galaxy. Some wore fine robes, others had armor made of strange metals. But all their eyes were on the center stage, where humans stood behind force fields like rare animals. Some humans looked angry, others looked broken. Most were silent. Queen Virelia of the Zinthari Empire sat high on her private balcony. Her skin was silver blue, her eyes glowing like stars. She was tall, proud, and feared by many. Her advisors stood beside her, whispering as each human was presented. Just pick a strong one, Your Majesty, one said. Or a pretty one to entertain the guests, said another. But the queen wasn't looking for strength or beauty. She was looking for something different. Her eyes stopped when a new human stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with short, brown hair and calm eyes. He didn't bow. He didn't cry. He just stared straight ahead. His name appeared on the screen. Daniel. That one, the queen said suddenly. The auctioneer was surprised. My queen, he is silent. No training. Just a war prisoner from Earth. Most nobles want someone more obedient. I don't want a toy. I want something interesting, she replied coldly. Bring him. Within minutes, Daniel was taken from the stage and placed in a golden hover cage. He didn't speak, he didn't resist, but his eyes met the queen's for just a moment and she felt something strange, like he was measuring her. The royal garden was the most beautiful place in the empire. Flowers from 10 different planets bloomed there. Crystal fountains floated in midair. And now in the center stood Daniel. He wore a simple robe, but his presence was strong. A living decoration, they called him. A gift for the queen's eyes. Every evening, Queen Virelia walked through the garden with her guards. She would look at Daniel from a distance, watching him stand like a statue, but inside she felt curious. Why didn't he speak? Why didn't he try to please her like other humans did? One evening, she ordered the guards to stay behind. She walked alone to him. "You're not scared of me?" she asked softly. Daniel looked at her, his voice calm. "Should I be?" It was the first time he had spoken since being captured. The queen blinked, surprised. "Most humans tremble before me," she said, stepping closer. "I'm not most humans." The queen studied him. His voice was strong but polite. His eyes never left hers. "What were you on Earth?" she asked. "Soldier," he replied. "Do you hate me for buying you?" "No. I hate the war that let it happen." The queen was silent. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her without fear, without lies. Just truth. She turned to leave, but then paused. "Walk with me." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was a statue." "Statues don't walk," she said, with a small smirk. They walked side by side through the garden. The guards were shocked to see it. So were the nobles. Whispers filled the palace halls. A human walking with the queen? She's going mad. But the queen didn't care. She looked forward to their evening walks. Daniel spoke little, but when he did, his words were deep, honest, and strange, comforting. One night she asked, "Why don't you try to escape?" Daniel looked at the stars above. "Because if I ran, I'd miss what's right in front of me." The queen didn't respond. Her heart beat faster for a moment, though she didn't understand why. That same night, an old noble asked her, "Your Majesty, why this human? What makes him so special?" The queen smiled gently. "He reminds me that even in chains, a man can stand taller than kings." But not everyone liked Daniel's presence. Some saw him as a threat, a danger to tradition, a stain on the throne. And in the shadows of the palace, jealous eyes were already plotting to end the queen's interest, before it went too far. The key. Sun of Zentheria rose slowly, painting the sky in soft purples and silver light. But the real tension in the palace wasn't in the skies, it was in the garden. A week had passed since Queen Virelia had started walking with the human. Her steps were now expected, but this time something changed. She arrived at the garden early, holding a small black box. Her guards watched with puzzled eyes. Daniel stood beneath a floating blossom tree, arms crossed. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes never missed movement. Without a word, the queen handed him the box. "What's this?" Daniel asked, finally breaking the silence. "Open it," she said. Inside were strange pieces, colorful crystal tiles, small carved tokens, and a flat board marked with ancient alien patterns. A game, clearly, but not one from Earth. "It's called Verenak," she said softly. "A strategy game. Our version of chess. Think you can beat me?" Daniel smirked. "Try me." They sat across from each other on the edge of the fountain, placing the game on a flat marble slab. The guards whispered among themselves. The queen hadn't played this game with anyone in years. Not even her most trusted advisors. Daniel studied the pieces. "Let me guess. The gold one is the queen?" She smiled. "No, it's the shadow blade. Most powerful piece. But also, the easiest to lose if used carelessly." "Like power itself," Daniel said, moving his first piece. Their match began. Day after day they met to play. The garden that once held silence now echoed with calm conversation, dry humor, and strategy talk. "You're learning fast," she said one evening as he cornered her shadow blade. "I've fought real battles. This is just a quieter kind," Daniel replied. Soon their matches became more than games. They debated politics, war, history. "You call Earth a small world," Daniel said one day. "But we never needed to conquer the stars to feel important, and yet here you are," she answered, smiling. "In chains. Chains can be broken, or slipped out of." The queen laughed for the first time in years, but not everyone found it amusing. A high advisor named Lord Tharnak watched the garden from his tower window, his eyes filled with fire. "She laughs now," he growled. "She was cold as stone last year. Now a human brings warmth?" He called for a secret meeting. "We can't allow this," he told the council. "The people already whisper. If she grows attached to the human—" "What do you suggest?" asked one counselor. "Something clean, something quiet, a drink, perhaps." The room fell silent. Then one slow nod, then another. That night, the Queen invited Daniel into the palace dining hall. For the first time, he sat at a royal table, dressed in a fine tunic, still quiet, still strong. Dishes were brought in, alien delicacies, fruits that sparkled, meats that steamed, and wine. The Queen lifted her glass. "To strange company," she said. Daniel lifted his own. But before it reached his lips, he paused. He sniffed the wine, then placed it back down, untouched. The Queen raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" "Smells. Wrong. Sweet. But something beneath it." He looked straight into her eyes. "You trust your own court?" Virelia froze. Moments later, the royal physician tested the cup in secret. The results were clear. Poison. Quick. Painless. But deadly. The Queen was silent for a long time. Then she ordered the guards. "Find who sent this." Within hours, Lord Tharnak was arrested. He claimed innocence, but his guilt was written across his face. "Why?" she asked him coldly. "He's not one of us," Tharnak hissed. "He's dangerous." "No," she replied. "He's honest." That night, Daniel was moved from the garden to the royal wing. "You'll be safer here," she said quietly. He looked at her with calm eyes. "You just don't want to lose your game partner," she smirked. "That too." But as she walked away, she paused just for a moment and looked back at him. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a question she didn't yet have the answer. To the palace, guards were doubled. Every drink was tested, every door locked. But still, fear hung in the air like smoke. Daniel sat by the tall window of his new chamber, watching the twin moons rise. He was no longer just a human in a garden. He was a target now, and he knew it. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for her. Queen Virelia stood in the council chamber, her voice sharp as a blade. "One of you tried to kill him," she said coldly. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Lord Tharnak had been exiled to the ice pits. But the Queen knew he hadn't acted alone. The next hand raised against him, she warned, "will be cut off." Her voice echoed, not just in the room, but across the palace. That night, as Daniel walked through the royal halls, a servant passed too close. A blade flashed from the sleeve, silent and fast. But Daniel was faster. He grabbed the wrist mid-strike, twisted, and slammed the attacker into the marble floor. Guards ran in, dragging the would-be assassin away. "You should have stayed a statue in the garden," the attacker hissed. Daniel's calm reply, "You should have aimed better." The Queen arrived minutes later, her eyes wide. "You're bleeding," she said, rushing toward him. "Just a scratch," Daniel muttered, wiping blood from his shoulder. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the wound. "I can assign more guards." "No," he interrupted. "Let me protect myself. I've done it all my life." Virelia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll give you what you need." The next morning, the training hall echoed with sound again, for the first time in years. Alien soldiers watched as Daniel trained alone, shirtless, sweat pouring down his back as he moved like a storm, fast, sharp, brutal. He picked up Zenthari, weapons, and adapted quickly. Some soldiers mocked him. "Look at the human," one laughed. "Trying to fight like us." But minutes later, Daniel disarmed him in 3 moves and held a blade to his throat. "I'm not trying," Daniel said. "I'm remembering." From that day, no one laughed again. Meanwhile, the Queen struggled with something deeper than politics or danger. She found herself thinking of him during meetings, dreaming of him in sleep, wanting to be near him when storms hit the palace skies. But it wasn't just emotion, it was fear, not of him, but of what was happening inside her. She had always been strong, cold, untouchable. But now she cared. One evening, she invited Daniel to the palace observatory. Stars filled the dome above them. Silence fell between them, but not an awkward one, more like two souls breathing the same air. "Why do you still stay?" she finally asked. "After the poison, the blade, the whispers?" Daniel turned to her. "Because this time, someone finally saw me. Not as a tool, not as a threat, just me." She looked into his eyes and saw no lies, no hunger for power, no fear, only something real. Just then a scream echoed from below. An explosion shook the palace wall. Smoke rose from the kitchen wing. "Guards!" the queen shouted. Daniel grabbed a nearby blade and ran with her. In the hallway they were ambushed. Masked assassins, 3 of them. Fast, armed, brutal. One swung a plasma blade at the queen, but Daniel stepped between them. The blade struck his side. He dropped to one knee but didn't fall. Blood soaked through his tunic. He roared, lifted his weapon, and drove it into the attacker's chest. The second came at him. Daniel twisted, using his pain as fuel, and disarmed him with a hard strike. To the head. The third ran but was stopped by the queen's energy whip. In the end, silence returned, but Daniel collapsed. He woke hours later in the royal infirmary. The queen sat beside him, her hand holding his tightly. "You're not allowed to die," she whispered, voice shaking. "I'm not that easy to get rid of," Daniel said, smiling weakly. She didn't let go. Rain wasn't common on Xantharia. But tonight, thunder rolled across the royal city, and cold silver rain splashed against the tall palace windows. Lightning lit up the dark corridors. Servants hurried. Guards were tense, and in the queen's private chambers the storm inside her heart was louder than the one outside. Virelia stood at the balcony, alone. Her long robe clung to her skin. The lightning danced across her face, highlighting her sharp, perfect features, and the rare softness in her eyes. Behind her, footsteps echoed. She didn't turn. "You should be resting," she said. "I've rested enough," Daniel replied, stepping inside the room. She finally turned. The sight of him, alive, scarred, strong, took her breath away in a way she didn't expect. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then she spoke. "You were willing to die. For me." Daniel nodded. "It wasn't just for you." She looked, confused. "Then, why?" He stepped closer. "Because I believed in something I saw in your eyes. Something your empire tried to bury. You care." She laughed softly. "Caring is weakness here." "No," Daniel said firmly. "It's power. The kind they don't understand." The queen took a slow breath. She moved closer to him, carefully, like she was approaching a flame. Her hand touched the scar on his side. "This should have been fatal," she whispered. "I heal fast," he replied, smiling. "I don't mean the wound." Their eyes locked. For a second, neither of them was queen or prisoner, alien or human, just two souls tired of pretending. "You should leave," she whispered. But her voice betrayed her heart. "I should," Daniel said, "but I won't." She didn't stop him when he stepped forward. She didn't pull away when he cupped her cheek, and when their lips met, she forgot the empire, the laws, the council, the stars. There was only warmth, only him. That night, under the storm's song, they gave in to what had been building for weeks, not just passion, but something deeper. She traced the scars on his chest, learning the battles he never spoke about. He kissed the markings on her back, symbols of a crown she never asked for. They whispered to each other in the dark, as if speaking too loudly would make it all disappear. Later, as the rain softened, they lay in silence. Daniel spoke first. "You don't have to be a queen for them," he said. "Be something real, for yourself." Virelia turned to him, her voice soft. "I don't even know who that is." "Then let's find out. Together." But beyond the chamber walls, things were already shifting. The guards had seen Daniel enter her room and not leave. The advisors were already awake, their whispers full of rage and fear. She's crossed the line, Lord Advisor Van Nox snarled. She has taken him as a mate. If the people learn of this, another gasped, they will demand her throne. But none dared act yet. Not tonight. Not while Daniel was alive. Back in the chamber, Daniel rose before the first morning light. He stood by the window, watching the clouds fade into golden mist. She stirred behind him. Leaving already? Just for a walk, he said, but I'll always come back. He kissed her forehead and stepped out quietly. But as he left, the queen pressed her hand to her stomach again. A strange warmth had started there. A new feeling. Something alive. The Zenthari moon rose full and silent over the palace. But within, the queen's chambers, her world was spinning faster than ever before. Queen Virelia stood barefoot, staring at her reflection in the tall mirror. Her royal gown no longer fit the same way. Her hand rested gently on her stomach. She already knew the truth. She had known for days, but now the royal healer's words echoed in her ears. Your Majesty, you are with child, with twins. Virelia had always been a ruler of iron, cold, calculated. She had faced assassination attempts, alien warlords, betrayals. But nothing had shaken her like this. Inside her body grew not just heirs, but a scandal. Children of a human. Half her, half him. Meanwhile, Daniel stood atop one of the watchtowers, watching the city glow below. His mind was uneasy. The stares from the guards had grown colder. His meals were delayed. His training sessions interrupted. Something was coming. He just didn't know what. That morning, the queen summoned him alone to her private garden. The air was thick with silence. She looked at him, eyes deeper than usual. There's something I need to tell you, she said. Daniel stepped forward. Is it about the council? Are they planning something? No, she said. It's about us. Her hand took his. Slowly, gently, she guided it to her belly. He froze, his breath caught. You're... She nodded. With twins, Daniel didn't speak. He just stared at her, at the hand over hers. Then slowly, a rare softness came to his face. He knelt before her, not as a subject, but as something far more loyal. I'll protect them, he said. And you, no matter what it takes. But peace did not follow. Within hours, the royal council gathered in secret. She carries hybrids, spat one elder. Half-human filth, another hissed. They cannot rule. This is betrayal, one. Voice calmer than the rest spoke above them all. Then we remove them, before they are born. Back in the queen's war room, Virelia paced. Her general stood silent. She knew what was coming. The whispers had become demands. The nobles wanted her to step down, to fix the mistake. Let them try, she said. They'll learn what it means to challenge a mother. Daniel entered, the room wearing simple armor. Not royal, not alien, but human and proud. They'll come for us now, he said. I know. Then let's be ready. That night, a riot broke out near the palace walls. Citizens gathered, shouting for answers. Some cried betrayal, others whispered support. Some even knelt praying to the stars for the children of two worlds. Inside the throne room, Virelia stood tall. Daniel stood beside her, hand on the hilt of his blade. I will not hide what I am, she declared, her voice echoing. And I will not deny what I carry. You said humans were weak, she continued, but this one bled for me, fought for me, loved me. And now he has given me heirs, not just of flesh, but of strength. The court fell silent. Then chaos. A group of royal guards stepped forward to seize Daniel, but something unexpected happened. Half of the guards turned their weapons against their own. One of them, a grizzled captain, barked, My queen stood for us when the council did not. I stand for her now. The hall exploded into conflict, loyalists versus traditionalists. Daniel fought with fury, shielding the queen, not just as her consort, but now as the father of her future. By dawn, the fires were out, the traitors were defeated, and the palace was quieter than it had been in years. Daniel, bleeding from a cut above his eye, stood watch as Varelia rested. He looked down at her hand, again resting over her stomach. This time, there was no fear in her touch, only pride. The palace was calm, but not quiet. Behind the polished stone walls, rebellion breathed in the shadows. And within the queen's body, 2 unborn children, part human, part Zenthari, were growing stronger by the day. Daniel walked the upper corridors with sharpened senses. He noticed everything now, how some guards no longer saluted, how whispers died the moment he passed, how servants looked at the queen's growing belly with unease or awe. Loyalty is a mask, he muttered to himself, hand resting on the hilt of his blade. And too many have started taking it off. Meanwhile, deep beneath the palace, in an abandoned wing sealed for decades, flickering torches lit the faces of armored traitors. Led by Counselor Vennak, a cold-blooded traditionalist, they planned their final strike. She is no longer queen, he hissed. She is a carrier of corruption, and that human, he poisons her mind. An alien commander beside him asked, "And the children?" Vennak's reply was chilling. "Burn the roots before they grow into trees." Above them, the queen sat alone in the nursery chamber under construction. There were no decorations yet, just walls and silence, and the future growing inside her. She spoke aloud, voice steady. "They want to erase you before you take your first breath." Then she stood, strong, tall, determined. "But they'll have to go through me." That evening, as stars pierced the night sky, an explosion rocked the lower halls of the palace. Fire, smoke, screams. The traitors had made their move. Daniel was already there, sword drawn, charging into battle like a storm. The corridors filled, with flashes of plasma and sparks of steel. Loyal guards fought side by side with him, but they were outnumbered. "They're inside," one shouted. "They've breached the inner sanctum." Daniel's heart sank. The nursery. In the tower, Varelia heard the chaos. She didn't panic, she didn't scream. She summoned her armor. Within minutes, the queen was in full battle regalia, silver plates across her body, her royal crest glowing on her chest. She marched straight into war. At the entrance of the nursery, 4 traitors had cornered 2 loyal guards and were breaking through the door. Then a whip of glowing energy wrapped around one attacker's throat. Another was blasted back by a pulse from the queen's gauntlet. Varelia stepped forward, eyes burning. "You dare threaten my children?" The guards, inspired by her fury, charged again. Meanwhile, Daniel had fought his way to the throne hall. Bloodied but focused, he met Vennak in the center. The old traitor sneered. "You, a human, think you belong here?" Daniel didn't answer with words. He answered with his blade. Their duel was brutal. Vennak was fast and cruel, but Daniel fought with the desperation of a father protecting his unborn blood. Vennak slashed Daniel's arm. Daniel knocked the weapon away, grabbed the counselor by the collar, and slammed him into the throne steps. "I didn't come here to belong," he growled. "I came here to change everything." With one final strike, Vennak fell, defeated. By dawn, the fires had died, the traitors were bound or buried, and the queen stood once more at the throne, Daniel at her side, both battle-worn but unbroken. People gathered at the palace gates, not to protest, but to kneel. Word had spread. The queen had defended her unborn children with her own hands. The human had defeated the council's blade, and the future was now theirs. Later, in the royal chamber, Daniel wrapped his arm gently around Varelia. She leaned against him, quiet for a long time. "They'll keep coming," she said softly. "Let them," he replied. "This time, we're not fighting alone." She smiled. "No, we're fighting as a family." The stars above Zentharia, burned strangely that night. An ancient prophecy whispered in forgotten temples had once said, "When a queen bleeds beside a human, the old world ends." Now that night had come, and from the edge of space a dark fleet, marked with red sigils and silent engines, moved swiftly toward the capital sky. Inside the palace, the queen stood tall on the war balcony, her silver cape trailing in the wind. Daniel stood beside her, now in official Zenthari armor, custom-made, designed for a human body but bearing the crest of royal protection. "You're no longer just a guest," Virelia said, looking at him. "You're my general now, and their father." He nodded. "Then I'll fight like a father, not just a soldier." Below, soldiers of every rank prepared for war. But something was different this time. They weren't just protecting a crown. They were protecting a future. As the enemy fleet descended, their leader sent a message, broadcast across all frequencies. "Return the hybrids, or we turn your sky into ash." The queen stepped forward, her voice echoing from every speaker in the empire. "Come and try." The first wave hit the outer shields by nightfall. The sky lit up with fire. Battleships clashed in orbit, and smaller, cruisers crashed into the fields beyond the palace walls. Daniel led the ground defenses. He moved like a storm, fast, controlled, unstoppable. He commanded both human tactics and Zenthari formations. Alien generals, once doubtful of him, now followed his every order. "Protect the queen," one shouted. "No," Daniel corrected, slicing through an enemy drone. "Protect what's in her womb. That's the future." In the queen's chamber, guarded by her most elite warriors, Virelia stood, glowing with power. Even pregnant, she refused to sit back. Her armor was designed to shield not just her, but the twins. When enemy assassins broke through a palace breach, she fought with fire in her eyes. Every step she took echoed with defiance. Every breath whispered, "I will not lose them." In the final hour of battle, the enemy leader landed on the palace steps. He was massive, 8 feet tall, plated in bone-like armor, a warlord from the old worlds. He pointed a clawed hand toward the throne room. "Step aside," he growled. "Give me the abominations." Daniel stepped forward, blood on his armor, fire at his back. "Come take them," he said. "But I promise only one of us walks away." Their duel was brutal. Daniel took heavy blows, cracked ribs, and nearly blacked out, but he never fell. And then, at the last moment, when the warlord raised his final strike, Virelia appeared. Behind him, her energy blade pierced through his spine. The beast roared and then fell. Together they stood over the body of the enemy leader. Together, they had ended the war. The twin moons rose high as silence fell over Zentharia. The enemy fleet retreated. Cheers rose from the palace grounds. Daniel leaned against Virelia, breathless. "You okay?" she asked, brushing blood from his brow. "I've had worse," he smiled. "But never with a better reason." She rested her hand over her stomach. "Their father? My general?" Weeks later, the Empire saw something it had never seen before. Not a coronation, not a marriage, something bigger. A public ceremony was held. The queen introduced her mate, not as a pet, not as decoration, but as her equal. And when she placed his hand over her belly, the crowd roared. 2 heirs would rise, blood of both worlds, and from this union came peace. Final lines. In the years to come, alien scholars would write books about the war, the scandal, the love. But the most repeated words would be those spoken by the queen herself. "You gave me a human to decorate my court, but instead, he decorated my life with courage, love, and twins."